Hello students, today will we discuss about it is correct to call George Bernard Shaw satirist. Okay. George Bernard Shaw's chief aim behind writing drama was always constructive and reformative, and so he used his plays as an institutions which he considered rotten and were eating the society. So he used satiric means, irony and sarcasm to puncture a host of social institutions and conventions. Okay. Critic after critic have called him a satirist, and Kazemian remarks that satire is the leading features of his plays, and laughter is merely the sugar coating thrown over the traditional bitter pill. By selecting comedy as his instrument, George Bernard Shaw, following the tradition and owing a just instinct, laughter relieves the strain of the contrast between human conventions and facts, so his plays are full of satire. Candler tells the Shaw's plays are full of satire. He is an idealist who wanted that all individuals, institutions and codes of conduct should conform to his idea of what is right and proper, and if it is not so, he lashes at them with the lash of laughter and satire. In fact, George Bernard Shaw was not an artist to present reality, for his plays are full of exaggerations and distortions of reality. He was certainly not a great artist because there are many artistic defects in his plays. It is only when we consider him as a dramatic satirist that his works at once becomes intelligible. Okay. There is no gainsaying the fact that satire is the chief instinct in his plays, because he always professed to be a reformer and guide of the society. He may laugh at the evils, but there is certain bitterness in his laughter. It is not pure as in the plays of Shakespeare's, but he is nearer to Ben Jonson in this play. In one play after another, he analyzes the facts regarding social institutions, codes, and conventions, and exposes their weaknesses throughout his long dramatic career. He worried on shames and affections. He tried to pull down the undesirable structure of social institutions and so often exaggerated their hollowness. We often find him indulging in the distortions of facts and describing things. And here is equal to the satirist in general. In play after play, he has attacked the old idols by exaggerating their faults and thus holds them up to ridicule. The institutions of marriage, family, romantic love, war, religion all come within the range of his attack. On Love and Solding, Widower's House exposes slum landlordism. In Heartbreak Houses, he attacked European materialism. There is enough satire in Candida also. Through Burgess, he has satirized that so-called model employers who exploit and overwork their employees, including women and children. He has exposed contemporary university education and shows that it produces useless young men like Lexi, who simply imitate their superiors and cannot think for themselves. In the Apple Cart, he has laughed at the concept of democracy. In St. John, he satirized the established authority of church. He has also satirized English national prejudices and superiority, the hollowness of claims of the church that the kingdom of heaven on earth can be established through preaching, has also been ridiculed and satirized in Canada, particularly when he points out that the people come to church only for a change and the next day they again behave in the same way. What to emphasize the satiric aspect in his play will be a gross injustice with him. He is not a thorough-going satirist like Pope or Swift can be, from they by the fact that he is not a frustrated person like others, but an idealist who has his own constructive way and fears no jealousy or ill will against anybody. This is why instead of being bitter, his approach is always joyous. This is why instead of being bitter, his approach is always joyous and optimistic. It has been emphasized that he does not have the Egyptians that man is basically evil, but the social convention have become old and rotten, so they need a quick change and redress. This indicates his strong belief in essential goodness of man. His philosophy of life forces the proof of this faith and expresses the optimistic attitude towards the gradual emergence of a superior human race and this growing social rationality. This unflinching faith of Shaw creates optimism and prevents the intrusion of any bitterness of his play. He lacks the savagery of Swift and does not cause pain to anybody but simply warns them and creates the consciousness for the evils, and this indirectly inspires for development and reform. Moreover, his satirical remarks are never personal but against the social institutions and conventions. This is why he did not create his enemies, rather has been honored as a thinker, an idealist, and even a philosopher. He is always honest, and this intellectual honesty saves him from becoming a bitter satirist. Instead of attack, it is weapon to be used for a noble purpose. George Bernard Shaw has often been considered a philosopher only because the ideas presented in his plays are unconventional and to some extent quite new. He can be also be termed a philosopher because of his coherent and comprehensive view of human nature and human life. In fact, his chief concern is to show the way in which life should be lived, and finally he comes to the conclusion that there is some power working behind the universe which he has termed as life force, which is nothing but the representation of the ultimate reality behind the world of senses. He found that the other things of the universe may be fictitious, but there can be no doubt about life force which can neither be neglected nor dismissed. This theory makes its appearance from time to time, and Shaw discusses it in great details in the preface to Man and Superman. This theory of life force finds a complete expression and development in back to Methuselah. It is because of his theory that Shaw is called creative evolutionist. In this sense, George Bernard Shaw has been called a philosopher. The theory of Darwin and created skepticism, and therefore Shaw felt the urgency of a credible and healthy religion for the support of society, which should be based on natural scientific theory in place of the supernatural, and he put forward his religion of creative evolution. This spirit or force is an independent power and fulfills its own purpose. Actually, Shaw got a hint from Butler for his theory of life force. George Bernard Shaw theory of life force is deeply influenced by the scientific theories of 19th century, which believed that in the beginning there was all matter and no life or spirit. Under the influence of certain specific conditions, this matter became conscious of itself and came to life. This life evolved into higher and higher form, and Darwin called it the survival of the fittest. Butler for the first time concluded the possibility of some living force which animated this matter. Schofanier, the German thinker, called it will, and Shaw's life force is quite similar to it. The result of this animation is living organism. Shaw suggests that life uses matter as an instrument because life cannot evolve unless it enters into matter. Matter limits this operation of the life force. Shaw does not believe in God in the Christian terms, but the immanence is driven by the mysterious power which is immanent. It is not omnipotent or omniscient to perfection, but it works on the principle of trial and error. The error in this process creates evil. In fact, this life force is passion for betterment, and this process goes on continuously instead of making any final achievement. By the intense willing of the vital life force, new and higher forms of life are evolved. This evolution is not towards form of greater beauty or physical strength, but towards higher forms of intelligence. Thus, the ultimate purpose of life force is to evolve into pure thought.